At the same time, advocates point to another brewing scandal: the alarming number of soldiers suffering from PTSD but getting kicked out for misconduct. Soldiers like 23-year-old Jonathan Norell.
All my uniforms in Iraq have bloodstains on them.
As a combat medic, he experienced the human toll of war every day.
I wore blood-soaked boots for I don't know how many weeks, and it wasn't until later on that it really started to get to me.
In Iraq, Norell volunteered to go out on missions, and that meant getting into harm's way.
When you got hit by the IEDs, what happened?
I would have a headache and ringing in my ears for at least 3 days afterwards.
Concussion?
I had a couple of minor concussions. Just had my bell rung a few times to where just really out of it.
What does that mean, have your bell rung?
It'd be like getting hit in the head with a brick.
He says his unit was hit by at least 6 IEDs. These multiple concussions can lead to traumatic brain injury. But it wasn't just the IEDs that affected him. It was also the brutal reality of death in a war zone.
One of the most traumatic experiences for me in Iraq was when a man was shot in the head, and his wife and his daughter begged me to help him and were crying and upset, and there was absolutely nothing I could do for him. He'd been shot in the face 7 or 8 times, and I had to hold the back of his head together to keep his brains from falling out all over the ground while we put him in the bag. You know, I didn't want that to happen in front of his wife and kids.
Like Chuck Luther, Norell learned to deal with those traumatic experiences by not thinking about them. After 9.5 months in Iraq, he was sent back to Texas, given 6 days leave to visit family. And that's when the war suddenly caught up with him.
I was driving back to my grandma's house, and the lights, I don't know what it was. I forgot where I was. I couldn't see the road anymore. I completely lost it. Crying, I couldn't breathe. I was scared. I didn't know what to think.
That first panic attack was just the beginning of a downward spiral. Even though he was now back at Fort Hood, Norell was plagued by disturbing memories of war.
We're going at it.
He didn't know who to turn to for help. He started to self-destruct by self-medicating.
I started drinking all the time. It got to where I couldn't even sleep anymore at night without waking up, sweating, without, slamming a bottle of Jack Daniels, before going to bed.
A whole bottle?
Not a whole bottle, but throughout maybe in a day, a whole bottle, yeah.
Norell finally went to see a doctor who diagnosed him with PTSD. The doctor recommended to Norell's commanders that he be medically discharged immediately and sent home. But that never happened.
It just turned into lies and field time after that.
Lies?
I don't know how many times I was told that it would only be a few weeks and I would be clearing and on my way home. And that was the only thing that kept me going.
Norell began to deteriorate, drinking, smoking pot. For a second time, the doctor recommended him for an immediate medical discharge. Instead, his commanders ordered Norell to go to California for heavy combat training.
I felt like it was the worst idea in the history of bad ideas.
In despair, Norell disobeyed orders and missed the flight.
Do you feel like they punished you?
Oh, dude, they punished me severely for that. I was real scared. I knew I was going to be in trouble, but it wasn't enough to stop me from doing it.
By then, Norell had racked up a long list of misconduct charges. He says he just wanted out. So when his commanders told him they were going to discharge him for misconduct, and that as a result, he would lose all his benefits, Norell signed the papers anyway.
I definitely signed it because I wanted to go home. I don't care about money. I don't care about anything anymore except going home.
Norell's mom had put out a call for help, and Carissa Picard was already working on his case. She sent his files to Andrew Pogany and other advocates to see if they could help overturn Norell's misconduct discharge.
There are members of the Army who say, look, this soldier was taking part in misconduct. He needs to be discharged. Take responsibility for what he did.
I agree with that, except we got to ask the question, what came first, the PTSD or the misconduct? If you haven't asked that question, then you have no business discharging people.
He says in Norell's case, it's clear the PTSD was causing his misconduct. With the help of advocates like Pogany, Carissa Picard flooded the Army with letters and phone calls. The evidence was so convincing that within 2 weeks, Jonathan Norell's discharge was overturned.
In a sense, I think she saved my life because she came in and within 12 hours I was getting help.
When you see Jonathan, 23 years old, what goes on for you?
I don't know that people realize how young our soldiers are. Like, I live on post, and there's thousands of Jonathan Norells, but I don't see them. Nobody does. They're all in their uniforms. And when I saw Jonathan, I realized, my God, he's so young.
Why does a soldier like Jonathan Norell fall through the cracks? How does that happen?
Well, I don't know that it's falling through the cracks. This is a huge hole. It's a flaw in the system.
Picard says these wrongful discharges won't stop until the Army regulations are changed. She says if we don't care for our soldiers now, they'll return to society more at risk for homelessness, criminal behavior, reliant on social services.
And who pays for that? We all do. So if you don't care on any kind of humanitarian level about these people who have sacrificed so much on your behalf, then care on a purely practical level because you're going to be paying higher taxes.
Just last month, the Army issued a new directive. It now requires soldiers who are getting administrative discharges to be screened for both PTSD and traumatic brain injury.
I know we're not perfect. We're busy, we're working hard. Again, we've been at war for a long time. So there may have been mistakes made. And if there are mistakes made, we have a responsibility to make those mistakes right.
But for Chuck Luther and his family, those mistakes have been devastating.
I realize they have a war to fight. I realize they're very busy, but somebody had to take care of my husband.
Chuck Luther is home now with his wife Nikki and their kids, Christian, Alexa, and Taylor. But the man Nikki married 16 years ago is not the same person, and they've been struggling to be a family again.
He blames himself, but it wasn't his fault. He thinks he should have been able to dust off and go on, and he just couldn't.
He was like the greatest dad ever. I mean, it's simple. He wasn't like that before he left.
Without treatment, Chuck Luther got worse. His violent outbursts became more frequent, breaking things, punching holes in the walls. It got so bad the police had to come to their house.
We both had to like physically hold my dad back from hitting my mom at times. And it was just like he was a completely different person.
After months of being home, Chuck Luther went to the VA for help. He was finally diagnosed with PTSD. More evidence to help Luther overturn his discharge. Now in treatment, he's getting better, learning how to leave the war behind him.
I fought for my life over there and I survived, and I plan on fighting for my life here and surviving.
Seeing their dad go through this battle has been tough on the kids too. His daughter Alexa used to wear his dog tags.
I wore him like almost every day when he was gone. And then once he started doing that stuff, I didn't hate him, but I just stopped wearing them. And now that he's finally getting better, I wear him again.
They're beginning to heal, and there's a new member of the Luther family. Marley Grace was born 4 weeks ago, and she's bringing them even closer. As for Jonathan Norell, he will now be medically discharged. But because of the backlog, he's still living on base, surrounded by the memories of war and of the Army he once proudly served.
Now I can't wait to take these boots off. I have to get out of this uniform. I have to step away from this, or I won't make it.
Do you know an active duty soldier or veteran who needs help? We've put together a list of legal, social, and psychological resources. It's all on our website.